All right, everyone's doing mock drafts. So we had to let the math do a mock draft as well. This is the analytics mock. We're calling it the mock your GM told you not to worry about, and there's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah.
So we're going to go through a pick by pick. We'll spend a little more time on some of the more interesting picks. We'll start with number 1. No surprises here.
Yeah, this is an interesting pick. Joe Burrow, one of the best projections we've ever had. Really great senior season after sort of a mediocre junior year. Burrow to the Bengals. Don't overthink it.
At number 2, we've got Tua going to the Redskins. This one's a little more interesting. It used to be where we would bring this up and people would lose their minds over it. And now there's a lot of acceptance. There's even some people who are saying, hey, if he were fully healthy, I'd be taking him over Joe Burrow.
Yeah, and I wouldn't go that far, but I would say, as far as if we're not going to trade this pick, if you're the Washington Redskins, you give yourself the best opportunity to avoid ruin at the quarterback position by putting Haskins and Tua in the same room. Give yourself a double of chance of having at least a good starting quarterback for years to come.
Which is the key.
All you can ask
If you don't
for.
have one of those, it doesn't matter what else you have. Which brings us to the Detroit Lions, who take the first defensive player. They take Jeffrey Okudah. I think a lot of people would assume the first defensive player will be Chase Young, but we've done a ton of studies on this. Coverage is more important than pass rush, and it's not good enough to have just a Darius Slay, right? You have to have multiple players who can cover. If you have one weak link, you're totally screwed. And one other thing that's interesting here is Patricia might actually agree with us.
Yeah, absolutely. They rushed the fewest number of rushers per play last season, and because they had some weaknesses in the secondary, a lot of them injury-related, a lot of them, trading Quandre Diggs, they really struggled in the past, in the coverage game near the end of the season. You add Okudah, not only is coverage more important than pass rush, but coverage depth is more important than pass rush depth. Go with Okudah here. Give your secondary some good players.
All right, so here's where it gets interesting. This is where people start losing their minds. All right, so forget about Henry Ruggs for a second. Just think about where the Giants are at right now. The Giants have a quarterback who they are staking their future on, and you ask yourself, what is going to ultimately get me to the promised land, to get me to the Super Bowl? And that will be because Daniel Jones turns out for the better, or they find a new quarterback. In order to do that, you have to give him an environment that allows him to succeed, and that means open receivers. Our number 1 receiver, according to our projection system, is Henry Ruggs III.
Yeah, you're not drafting all pros. You're drafting good offenses, which lead to good teams, which leads to wins. And even though Chase Young's probably going to be the highest probability on the board of being an all-pro player, Henry Ruggs gives the New York Giants the best chance of winning in the years to come by supplementing and enhancing Daniel Jones.
I mean, that's what's so hard about this. So you think about Chase Young and you go, okay, I think he's going to be a better player at his position than Henry Ruggs will. And that's fine.
Yep.
But Henry Ruggs does something in catching the football that's just more valuable than pass rushing. And so that's why the Giants go wide receiver here instead of Chase Young. It's not saying Henry Ruggs is a better football player than Chase Young. It's saying by virtue of what he does, he's going to give them more value, and that's what you're trying to accumulate here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we go here to the 5th pick. Now we're talking about Chase Young, defensive end, edge player, Ohio State. And this is really, again, about the evolution of this Dolphins team.
Yep.
They don't have a quarterback of the future. They're not really concerned with enhancing his sort of like year-to-year growth. They just need to get good players, and Young is the best player in this draft. So they get a good value for him at number 5 here.
Yeah, and we're doing no trades.
Yep.
So maybe they trade up. In the grand scheme of things, we're doing no trades here. At 6, our number 1 offensive tackle, Tristan Wirfs. Dude is a just massive beast. He graded really well. He tested really well. And the Chargers haven't had a good pass-protecting offensive line in forever.
Yeah, he leapfrogs Andrew Thomas because of a good combine. They're both pretty close, but he gets the edge there based on athleticism.
Defensive playmaker. I can't believe we put linebacker down there.
Speaking of athleticism, Isaiah Simmons, terrific at the combine. But even prior to the combine, we wrote the piece that he projects as a very good one of those, sort of safety linebacker hybrids. And those players haven't always panned out. But if you can use them, I think he's a great replacement here for Luke Kuechly in the middle of that Carolina defense.
Yeah, losing a pretty versatile, pretty great player in coverage in Kuechly. The Cardinals, a lot of thought they might go offensive tackle here, and something that we discussed, but ultimately they're in a situation with Kingsbury and Kyler Murray where you've got to give Kyler Murray opportunities to show his skill. And right now, they don't have anyone that can get open. Jerry Jeudy is right there with Henry Ruggs. We have him just a click below, but he's the guy that got open. He plays a lot more out of the slot. One of the things that Ruggs had going for him is he won a lot from the outside. But the Cardinals, they could use someone in the slot to win.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Fitzgerald near the end of the career, a lot of 10 personnel, so there's going to be up to 2 slots on the field at a time. Jerry Jeudy helps them here, and from a positional value standpoint, tackle not quite as valuable as wide receiver. So if you can get a wide receiver to enhance Kyler Murray's play, they did a little bit of it last year, and they improved their offensive production as a result. They double down here with Jeudy.
All right. Number 9, Andrew Thomas, who was, I think, many of our number 1 tackles heading into the combine. Didn't test quite as well as Tristan Wirfs, and that's why he ends up at 9. But the Jags clearly need some talent there.
Yeah, absolutely. They're in a similar position as the Miami Dolphins in that they just need talent sort of all over the place. Gardner Minshew is at least a decent start at quarterback. He gets some protection here in Thomas.
At number 10, going back to the well for offensive tackle, and this is one that was tough for us because Houston, it's not a school known for producing NFL talent, but Josh Jones, he graded so well, and he tested really well and looked great at the Senior Bowl, so there's a lot of things going for him. And the Cleveland Browns, they could use a tackle.
Yeah, they don't need guys on the outside. To enhance Baker Mayfield, I think they're going to have to go with the offensive line, and Jones is the best option here.
All right, the New York Jets going with CeeDee Lamb. Many people have CeeDee Lamb as their number 1 wide receiver, but what he did at Oklahoma, while it was very impressive, you made this great point, he wasn't competing with anyone. Yeah. So, by virtue, he's going to get some pretty impressive production numbers. This is a great pick for the Jets.
Yeah, absolutely. Jets need a number 1 receiver. I think Robbie Anderson's going to leave. To your point about Lamb, why he's down at 11 and maybe not at 4 or 5. Not only is he not competing for anybody with targets at Oklahoma, but he's not competing with great defenses in the Big 12.
The Raiders. Now this one's interesting because you would presume, well, if Lamb or Jeudy or Ruggs are on the board, they're taking him. They're not. And so what we said here is, well, they need help on both the coverage side and the receiving side. So let's go with the one that's better value here at 12.
Absolutely. Another position where, Derek Carr had a pretty good first half of the season last year. Is he the future? I don't know, but at 12, it's probably too high to take one of those secondary quarterbacks. Get some talent on the outside of your defense here in Fulton.
Christian Fulton was fantastic, faced some really tough competition, was right there with Okudah. At 13, we have another wide receiver off the board. You might be noticing a trend here.
Yeah.
The passing game matters. Laviska Shenault kind of do it all. If you're looking at like Isaiah Simmons, but on the offensive side, Laviska Shenault is that guy, wide receiver, tight end, put him in the backfield, doesn't matter. And Frank Reich is the type of offensive coordinator you'd like to see him play with.
You supplement T.Y. Hilton as sort of a deep threat near the end of his career. Laviska Shenault, sort of a do-everything underneath guy. It's a pretty good offense for whomever becomes the quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts this year.
Yeah, you think about what Deebo Samuel did in San Francisco. The first safety off the board, Grant Delpit, LSU. The guy was a playmaker, had some missed tackle issues, but that's kind of what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do, right? They have a ton of athletes, they take a bunch of chances, and they want to make some big plays, and he fits perfectly in there.
Yeah, Todd Bowles, has been pretty good with safeties in his career, one of the best defensive play callers in the league. Took that team, a top 10 team in yards per play allowed. We look at that defense and say, well, they gave up a lot of points, but a lot of that was the interceptions by the offense. You can enhance that with some more coverage. Delpit, a little bit of a down year last year, but in the projection system looks really well due to prior play.
This is one that is interesting because Justin Jefferson played primarily in the slot at LSU, goes to the Broncos. He's not necessarily the straight line deep threat, but he did test really well. He ran an incredible 40, and this is about taking the player that gives you the best value, even if it doesn't fit your perfect need. They still have a need at receiver, and you can win from the slot.
Absolutely, and that's the beautiful part about offense now in 2020 is you don't need guys to be perfect receivers, right? You got Courtland Sutton doing his thing, you have Noah Fant doing his thing, and now Justin Jefferson from the slot. It gives Drew Lock an opportunity for the Broncos to find out if he's the quarterback of the future or not.
Yeah, and there's some speed available in free agency too.
Yep.
We go to the Falcons, who take a cornerback. This is one that we really hope happens because we think they could really use it's not just we think. They could really use some help in coverage, and Diggs would provide that.
Yeah, over the years they've had players like Robert Alford struggle, Brian Poole struggle, Desmond Trufant get hurt but also struggle a little bit. If they were to have that depth, and they've tried but they haven't quite succeeded there, I think Diggs gives them the opportunity to deal with injuries and poor play in the secondary should it happen.
All right, to the second half, Antoine Winfield Jr. goes to the Dallas Cowboys at safety. They could really use some help on that back end. They have some nice corners, pending they keep Byron Jones, and Antoine Winfield Jr. projects to be really solid on the back end.
Yeah, and their linebackers weren't quite as good in coverage. The young guys that they had, they were very good in 2018, struggled a little bit in 2019 with injuries, but also ineffective play. I mean, you need safeties to sort of make up for those players. Should they struggle? They've struggled at the safety position with Jeff Heath. Winfield Jr. can start in his stead, but also play down in the box should their young linebackers struggle in coverage as they did last year.
The Miami Dolphins continue to shore up their pass defense. They now go with C.J. Henderson. This guy is interesting because he had a very good year a couple years ago, not so strong last year, and tested really, really, really well. So this is a guy who is going to be very athletic, going to provide that athleticism you need that Brian Flores wants, and obviously their coverage was a disaster last year.
It's a miracle they could win 5 games with the worst defense in the NFL by PFF WAR by a country mile. Henderson gives Brian Flores some talent to work with, and I think he could probably leverage that to their benefit now that they got Chase Young and Henderson in the same defense.
We go now to the Raiders' second pick, and this is the deep speed we were talking about, Jalen Reagor. You maybe make a case for him going to Denver at 15. Either way, the Raiders, I should say, division rivals, have a really nice duo with Fulton and Reagor.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this gives you the question of, okay, can Carr be a deep quarterback if you give him the options? They haven't had the options in recent seasons. This gives them the opportunity to figure out if he's that quarterback that they want to go with into the future, or they need to draft somebody else.
Or maybe they go with a different quarterback this year who likes to throw the deep ball, and Reagor can facilitate that. First tight end off the board, Hunter Bryant. There are 2 tight ends that end up being picked in the first round here. Hunter Bryant, the smaller one, maybe a little more versatile, but he's our highest projected tight end.
Yeah, absolutely. Highest catch rate, just a reliable target for Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew, not a high A-dot quarterback, so he's going to be, looking for receiver. Chark's a good down the field guy. Hunter Bryant helps them out. Last year they were mocked to T.J. Hawkinson over and over and over again. A year or two late, but they get their tight end here in Bryant.
21, the Eagles go with Denzel Mims. This is a guy that shot up draft boards. Everyone sort of thought, well, he can't run that diverse of a route tree. Well, look, the guy produced. He produced well, and he tested really well, and provides some speed that, quite frankly, the Eagles just have not had.
Yeah, they haven't had really a all-around good receiver since Jeremy Maclin in 2014. They've sort of tried to patch it up here and there, and it really hit a breaking point last season. Mims helps them have a more complete receiver room.
The Buffalo Bills go tackle here. You could obviously make a case for some wide receivers. Yep. We kind of went back and forth. Ultimately, we thought Cleveland was the better value than going down into the kind of bottom or second tier of wide receivers.
Yeah, a good testament to how well Buffalo's built their roster. This was actually a tough pick for us because as far as needs are concerned, they got Cordy Ford last year. He struggled as a tackle. Probably move him into guard, put Cleveland at tackle, and give Josh Allen a good chance to sort of at least have some protection on that offensive side of the ball.
Then the Patriots, and this is the second tight end. I'm going to let you give this a try, but I'll try first here. Albert Okwuegbunam.
Let's just go with Albert O.
Yeah, Albert O works.
Yeah.
I've been practicing, and it's hard in the heat of the moment to get it. But one of the cool things about him is he's a guy that has some speed,
yep.
under 4.5 40, but also is 6'5". And you think about what they lost with Gronk. He's not going to be Gronk. Don't freak out. But he is a guy that can provide a little bit of a deep threat from the tight end position.
Yeah, he runs a 4.49, and whomever plays quarterback, for the New England Patriots will be better than what Kelly Bryant offered Missouri last year as a transfer from Clemson. That's why some of his numbers aren't as impressive, but his testing is, and his projection is as a down the field player that the Patriots sorely missed last year with Gronk being retired.
The New Orleans Saints go with Chase Claypool, who, it says wide receiver down there, but you could almost put offensive weapon, and that's perfect for Sean Payton, who clearly likes offensive weapons given what he tendered Taysom Hill with. But Chase Claypool is a freakish athlete. He's big, and he can play in different areas of the field, which is what the Saints need.
Yeah, they didn't have a second wide receiver get over 500 yards last year, and so they need some secondary players other than Jared Cook and Michael Thomas, and Claypool gives them that on the inside of the field. has the deep speed to maybe go on the outside a little bit, but a versatile weapon for New Orleans here.
Yeah, can attack the seams. At 25, the Minnesota Vikings go with Ashton Davis, safety, California. They're probably going to lose Anthony Harris, so you figure, well, this looks like a good fill-in.
Yeah, not only that, Harrison Smith is sort of reaching the end, I think, of a really good career. Jaron Kearse probably leaving free agency. Two starting cornerbacks hit free agency, and they'll probably get rid of Xavier Rhodes. So they just need secondary players, and I think Ashton Davis is their best option here. He plays more of a deep role, allowing Harrison Smith to sort of roam around in that hybrid position he's dominated over the years.
Dolphins' third pick, and they go with cornerback here. Just to reiterate, they are going to build from coverage and pass rush here with Gladney coming in, cornerback from TCU.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they have so many first-round picks over the next few years. Eventually, one will be used on a quarterback if it's not used with the trade up here. But when that quarterback comes in, what they want is to have a decent roster around him, and building from the most valuable positions, sort of they get Gladney here.
Yeah, it's interesting because you could say, well, is now the time that you would want to take Justin Herbert? And it might be worth talking about the quarterbacks here for a second, because we don't have any quarterbacks other than Tua and Burrow. And the reason for that is that in our projections, none of them look worth taking a first-round flyer on. There are flyers that you can take down the road.
Yep.
They don't have to be in the first round. I think that's really important.
Yeah, a guy like Jalen Hurts, for example, is projected higher than Herbert and Love, but he's not going to be somebody that anybody else is going to value in the first round. So you want to take him when sort of the market bears, better. Same guy with like Josh Love or Tyler Huntley. Those are guys that are probably better off taking a shot at deeper in the draft than using one of your coveted first-round picks on a guy who we don't even have projected as a starter in the NFL.
Yeah, Gardner Minshew was the most valuable rookie last year, and no one would have thought that coming into the draft.
Yep.
At 27. The Seahawks go with Cameron Dantzler, cornerback, Mississippi State. Now, his big issue is that he's super slow.
Yep.
Not compared to you or I, but compared to other cornerbacks, he's kind of slow. Ran over a 4.6. But the Seahawks, they've actually had success with quote-unquote slow wide receiver cornerbacks before.
Yeah, and in competition in college matters here, and he played in the SEC, which is he's not going to, if he's slow in a lower tier conference, it might show in the NFL, but he's competed at the highest level in college. Richard Sherman only ran a 4.56. Dantzler not that much slower than that, and again, the Seahawks run a lot more zone where he can still be valuable.
The Ravens, and this was a real tough one. We went back and forth on this. Ultimately went with Curtis Weaver, an edge out of Boise State, a guy who provides a ton of value, is a little versatile at the edge position. And this is us saying, Ravens, we don't think you should franchise tag Matthew Judon.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a prime trade down spot, and we've seen that a number of times here. But, because they don't have a ton of needs for starters on the Baltimore roster. But, if they let Judon go as another sort of exodus in their edge group, Weaver would be a good replacement here. Good as a pass rusher in our projection system, good as a run defender. So an all-around good player for a defense that doesn't really need him to be a superstar. Yeah,
you could make a case, hey, if there was one of those receivers that fell here, yeah, maybe you take him here. But the Ravens don't have a ton of things that they need. Curtis Weaver is one of those, does fill one of those spots. Titans at 29 go with Jack Driscoll. Now, you'll notice we've taken a bunch of tackles. There are probably a bunch of tackles people were expecting to come off the board. Jack Driscoll, not one of them, but here's a guy who's been so solid as a pass protector against a lot of really good competition, and that projects really well into the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. A very good pass protection sort of projection here. Not as great, sort of in terms of run blocking, but that doesn't really matter at the NFL level nearly as much play for play. If you can protect, and especially in a situation where if Tannehill comes back to Tennessee, he's a guy that struggles when under pressure in terms of taking sacks. If you can put him under pressure, incrementally less play for play, you'll be valuable, and that's what Driscoll will probably do here.
Yeah, he was took the highest rate of sacks of any quarterback last season. Packers here go with another tackle. Balaga says he wants to come back, but doesn't, I don't know. He's been really injured. This might be the time for them to reassess. Again, they could take a wide receiver here, but we've gotten to the point where we finally, there's not as much talent there at wide receiver. There's still a ton of talent at tackle, and that's why we go with Matt Pert, who projects, again, line really well as a pass protector.
Yeah, and Green Bay's been really progressive about this position, even though they've had one of the best tackle pairs in the league in Bakhtiari and Balaga. They drafted Jason Spriggs a couple years ago. He didn't work out. Pert's going to come in. Even if Balaga stays, he's still a good pick because you can swing him into guard, or you can have him be the heir apparent to one of the tackle positions.
Yep. The Niners take Tyler Johnson, wide receiver, Minnesota, a guy who there is some question about his athleticism, but you can't question the guy's production. He was a top 5 graded wide receiver for us last year and continued to win regardless of where he was put and regardless of where he went up against. The San Francisco 49ers do a good job of getting wide receivers who can produce involved.
Yeah, they scheme players open about as well as anybody in the league. So if there were any questions about Johnson's ability to separate, they'd be mitigated a little bit by San Francisco. But even then, a solid all-around player, productive in an offense that had other receivers that were also productive. So he was still able to garner a fair share of targets. That's valuable as we project these players forward.
Really good route runner. At 32, the Super Bowl champions take Davion Taylor. It says linebacker. You could put him in that similar category of just defensive playmaker, and boy, do they need that. They had linebackers that couldn't cover to the point where they were just blitzing them all game because it was more valuable than having them try to cover somebody. So Davion Taylor fills a nice need there.
Yeah, and that's it. Anthony Hitchens is the least valuable linebacker in the NFL over the last 2 years. He took off 450 snaps, but they were given to Ben Neiman out of Iowa, was undrafted 2 years ago. They probably want more talent in that coverage position, and it's not that Taylor's so bad against the run that he can't play there. So this is a good all-around player for a Chiefs defense that I think has struggled at that position since Derek Johnson retired.
You can read all of the write-ups on all of these guys. You can send us all of your, I'm sure, glowing feedback. Head to pff.com and check it out. We'll probably do one or more iterations of this. Pro days still have to happen. So this will be a lot of fun. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys later.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.